Once again, American Pickers star Mike Wolfe has opened up about Frank Fritz after months of silence. The truth isn't pretty. Fans have been guessing for years that they broke up, and now shocking new information has come out that makes things even worse. The trouble got worse when Frank broke up with his fiancée Diane Bankson. What did they really do to each other, and why is Mike talking now? Keep reading because this story is more complicated than the early ties. Frank Fritz has always loved old things, even before he knew what a TV camera was. His childhood was spent digging through flea markets, garage sales, and dusty store basements. He was interested in the history that was hidden in old things that people had forgotten about. Frank saw hidden stories where others saw junk, and his desire to find out everything became the foundation of his life. At the same time, Mike Wolfe, who was only a year younger, was also chasing a dream. He went through old barns, storage units, and dumps on the side of the road, saving artifacts from being lost forever. Some people might have thought that an old bicycle frame or sign was useless, but Mike saw a gem. Both guys stood out in their small town, where people usually didn't spend the weekend looking for rusted memorabilia. Frank and Mike didn't become best friends right away, despite what most people think. A lot of the time their paths crossed, but each was focused on making something real out of this strange interest. Frank went the traditional way and worked as a fire inspector in Iowa for 25 years. He used that job to find even more secret gems by going to old firehouses and business buildings that were full of things people had forgotten about. Mike had different goals. He wanted to bring the excitement of picking to people all over the country. It took a lot of courage to pitch a reality show. He filmed his backroads adventures for years, gathering enough video to persuade a network that America needed to take a look at their world. The History Channel finally said yes after being turned down almost endless times, and American Pickers came into the world in 2010. Some magic was caught on the show. One personality is flashy and full of ideas, and the other is calm and stable, getting into dirty barns and taking valuable Americana with them. Mike Wolfe told the story with big dreams of brand growth and deals, and Frank Fritz added a warm, approachable touch. Their energy lit up the screen and made people want to join them on their wild hunts across the country. On the other hand, real life was complicated when the cameras were away. It was hard for Frank to talk about his Crohn's disease, which made him very sick and tired. He dealt with the pain by smiling, which meant that he often missed parts of the shooting. At the same time, Mike moved forward. He was determined to make what he had made bigger. Their work together paid off. The show became very famous very quickly, making them well known. Diane Bankson, another important person in Frank's life, was always there in the background. It wasn't widely known that she had a lot of emotional power over Frank because they had been together on and off for years. As American Pickers got going, Frank and Diane's ups and downs relationship started to fall apart behind closed doors. The people who made the show and the people who watched it had no idea how bad things were getting. Everything looked like it was going to work out at this point. Two pickers from the Midwest had become famous for saving old things from rot while charming crowds. Frank's quiet health problems, personal fears, and his unstable love story with Diane Bankson all led to a storm that no one saw coming from behind the curtain. The front of unity would soon begin to fall apart, and lies would be brought to light. Getting well known, people were glued to their TVs when American Pickers came out. The new, interesting, and addicting idea of making old, dusty barns into gold mines was great. Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz worked well together. Mike had a lot of energy and was eager to make deals. Frank, on the other hand, seemed more relaxed, like everyone's nice neighbor. They drove around on country roads together, bringing old things out from under decades of junk. With success came a strict plan. Filming took weeks at a time, and each show required hours of travel and talking to people on camera. The producers pushed him very hard. The scores go up as the find gets more exciting. It worked. Their fan base exploded, and all of a sudden, pickers from a small town in Iowa were famous all over the country. Interviews, public appearances, and signings became the standard. But looks aren't always what they seem. Frank's smile was just a mask for real problems. He had to deal with the painful signs of Crohn's disease, which made him tired and in pain all the time. He was either getting better or getting ready for another flare-up when he wasn't on set. At the same time, the show covered up his absences to keep things moving. Co-workers talked behind Frank's back about the problems that existed between his health needs and the needs of the show. Not too public. Still, in the middle of all this chaos, Diane Bankson became Frank's secret escape. They were comfortable with each other because they had known each other for years. It felt like a second home to him. Diane wanted a stable life, not a crazy one with a TV star. It hurt her to see Frank push himself to make it to filming times, especially since his health was getting worse and he was feeling more stressed. Even though things were rough, Frank asked Diane to marry him in 2017. At this point, he was thinking about a real partner who could help him stay grounded while he dealt with his illness and fame. In the hopes of getting away from the attention, he bought them a house in Iowa. But the stress of the show and the long time they spent apart made it hard for their love to stay alive. But for watchers, Frank and Mike could not be stopped. They were the Pickers, a group of friends who could not be stopped and turned rust into money. The show went on, but cracks could be seen in the background. Mike's constant need for bigger deals and Frank's getting worse health problems made it hard for them to work together. Diana, on the other hand, felt like she was stuck between high-stakes TV production, Frank's personal problems, and her own desire for a more normal life. Behind the scenes, there was a lot of stress that came out in the form of small fights over money, schedules, and whose antiques got the most attention. Frank was in pain, and Mike's big personality made him feel like he was being dominated. People who were close to them noticed that their arguments were getting more heated and happening more often. The people stayed wide-eyed even though the drama was getting worse. Fans rushed to see these two and the ratings went through the roof. Nobody could guess the meltdown expecting them. As the pressure ramped up, so did Frank's health problems, and Diane's role in his life took a dark turn. Soon, secrets that once stayed hidden in the Iowa countryside would unravel in front of the world, causing shocking accusations, and finally, a sadness that no one could ignore. Health problems and struggles that aren't being talked about. Even though he was having a lot of success on TV, Frank Fritz was fighting on many fronts. Even though he tried to look calm and happy on camera, Crohn's disease kept him from ever being truly at ease. Off camera, he was so tired and in so much pain that he couldn't do anything. He was already in bad shape, but traveling across the country for American Pickers made things even worse. As the stress grew, a bad habit of drinking to relax grew stronger. At first, it wasn't too bad, maybe a few drinks to relax after a long day of shooting. But as the demands of the show grew and personal problems piled up, so did the drinking. I saw Diane. She begged him to take it easy and find better ways to deal with things, and Frank couldn't seem to stop it. In 2018, things got even worse when it was said that Frank bought Diane an expensive ring to make his plans to marry her official. At first glance, it seemed like a fairy tale. A famous reality TV star fell in love. But behind those happy pictures, claims of cheating came to light. Diane said she saw Frank with someone else. In response, Frank said Diane had lied to him first. Each side of the story said the other had broken their trust, making it a rough read. Every part of Frank's life was affected by this powerful dynamic. It was said that he was easily sidetracked and moody on set, and that he often shut himself off. Mike Wolfe saw the change, but he didn't seem to know what to do to help. The show's producers kept shooting because they thought Frank's personal problems would go away on their own. It got worse instead. When Diane sued Frank for carelessness with fireworks, it was a very bad flashpoint. What she said was scary. She said Frank and a friend were trying to set off a fireworks in an old ashtray. They are said to have left it there without telling her when it didn't work. Diane later said she tried to use the ashtray, which set off a blast that hurt her hand and arms badly. She hurt herself badly and lost her eyebrows and eyelashes. Frank didn't like this version, making his friend look guilty. The case became a media scandal no matter what. The tabloids loved the story. Frank Fritz's fiancée sues him over a fireworks accident. Suddenly, the likable antiques fan was seen in a worse light. Careless, irresponsible, and maybe even mean. Diane dropped the case in the end, which made things even more mysterious. Some thought it might be a private village. Others thought she just wanted to stay out of the court mess. But Frank's reputation was hurt. There was always the truth behind every fight and every shocking discovery. Frank was going downhill. His health got worse, his friendship with Diane fell apart, and his partnership with Mike Wolfe was in danger. Still, the show kept filming, and fans were happily unaware of what was going on behind the scenes. Cracks don't stay hidden for long, though. It wouldn't be long before Mike Wolfe finally said something about Frank Fritz. That door could not be closed after it was opened. The fight with Mike Wolfe. One chasm opened in Frank Fritz's longtime relationship with Mike Wolfe while he was dealing with his own demons. The show American Pickers became a huge hit, but growing tensions were making them want to break up. Fans noticed that Frank only showed up sometimes. Health problems were given as the stated reason. But as the months went by, claims of a plot spread quickly. Was Frank leaving, getting fired, or tired of his job? Mike Wolfe didn't give much information. He posted hints about new picks and places to go, but he didn't call Frank by name very often. After that, it was said that Frank was no longer welcome. That was it. The goodbye message was short and almost casual. Fans were ready for something more after 10 years of roadside arguments, big laughs, and sibling bonding. It felt more like a business report. In interviews, Frank replied that Mike had left him while he was having back surgery and going through personal problems. Frank says Mike never called, checked in, or showed him how to get help. Frank saw the bond as something that happened only in front of the camera. Mike wasn't really interested in fixing things, though. People chose sides. He has 185 stitches and metal rods in his spine, which makes him literally unable to do anything. After the stroke in 2022 and the court naming a guardian, Frank could no longer take care of himself or decide what to do with his money and life. In the beginning, there was some hope. According to reports, Frank was able to speak again, but it was still hard for him to move around. A person who knew him well said that even though he wanted to talk, physical treatment seemed like an impossible task. Some of his best friends tried to cheer him on, but the fire that used to define him was gone. And through it all, Diane Bankson's name was never mentioned. The woman who had been there for him and who he had planned to marry was nowhere to be found. She didn't say anything public about his condition or even mention him once in a while, if she knew. What they used to share was hidden under years of anger and court cases. Mike Wolfe talked about Frank Fritz, but this time it was different. Diane stayed quiet. No longer angry, the bitterness had been replaced by sorrow. Mike avoided talking about Frank's death directly for years, staying away as their once strong relationship fell apart. But the stroke changed everything. Mike spoke up when Frank was at his worst. He asked his friends to stop the drama and pray for Frank, which was one of the few times he was truly open. He wrote, "Now is not the time to clear the air. Frank is in the hospital after having a stroke. Please think about and feel sorry for him." Mike's words hinted at something he hadn't said, a shame that had been bothering him for years. Mike called Frank for the first time in a long time, and at the very end of Frank's life, they would have one last chance to make peace. One last goodbye. Frank Fritz's health got worse slowly and painfully in the last few months of his life. He used to be known for having a lot of energy and a sharp mind, but now he needed carers to stay alive. Frank had a hard time with physical therapy while he was living in an assisted living home. He would sometimes show signs of improvement and then seem to lose all motivation. Then the news came out on October 1, 2024. Frank Fritz passed away at the age of 60. The fact that he had died was revealed by Mike Wolfe. After years of tension, silence, and disagreements that weren't fixed, Mike told everyone the news, and it was clear from what he said that Frank's loss hurt him a lot, no matter what they had done together in the past. Mike wrote, "It breaks my heart to tell you all that Frank died last night. What you saw on TV is the same thing I've always seen. I've known Frank for more than 50 years, someone who dreamed and was both sensitive and funny." He went on to say, "We've been on a lot of trips together and driven a lot of miles together. I feel so lucky to have been there with him on his last trip home. I'll miss you a lot and love you a lot. I know things are better for you. It was a big change from the cold space that had been between them before." Fans had been wondering for years if they would ever talk again, if they could ever get back together with the bond that made American pickers famous. At last, they had. Reports say that Mike went to see Frank over Memorial Day weekend and had an emotional talk with him. It was the first time in years that they could really say goodbye. There won't be any more cases or competition for jobs, just two old friends having one last talk. Diane Bankson never came back, though. After Frank's stroke, some people thought she might reach out, but she never did. She was no longer with him. Frank was having a hard time in his last years, but Diane had started over with her life, moving on with her life, starting a new relationship, and forgetting about the past. She had been through too much, and the link they used to have had been destroyed by lies, lawsuits, and accusations that neither of them could forgive. That could have been the real tragedy. Did Mike Wolfe speak out the right thing to do? Or was it already past time? Leave your thoughts below and click subscribe for more shocking news. Happy to have you watch this video with us.